Okay, thank you, everybody. I wouldn't normally use that, but there are so many people in the room, I thought I'd better use it. Just calling this meeting of the Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Authority to order. For members of the public, the session will be recorded and uploaded to the YouTube channel. And if I'd ask those that are on screen, if you could mute your cameras until we call you to speak, that would be appreciated. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Councillors Ado, Carroll, Chappell and Hussein.
Thank you. Item number 2 are minutes of the meeting of the Fire Authority held on the 11th of December 24. Are there any questions as to accuracy? Can I take them as read? Happy to approve them. Thank you. Item number 3 is matters arising from the previous meeting. So FA 49, the People Strategy 2020 to 25 year 4 update. The chairman asked that for National Apprenticeship Week, officers look at holding an event and getting Santander, Milton Keynes City Council and others together to meet some apprentices and publicise it. Some members will have attended the event before this meeting, which indeed we did. We were enjoying quite a tour of Milton Keynes today. So we had a fantastic session this morning, and many congratulations to the apprentice team. Is Anna here or is Anna? No. Anna collected a fantastic presentation celebrating the service's achievements, 191 apprentices through our apprenticeship programme since it commenced. And particular congratulations to our apprentices in the service for their achievements. FA 50, Health, Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report. This was the item about the acts of violence against a firefighter. And I asked whether the perpetrator was prosecuted. Assistant Chief Fire Officer advised that Thames Valley Police charged the perpetrator with assault on an emergency worker, and the latest information received from TVP was that the case was working its way through the judicial system. FA 52, member update on the Fire Brigade's Union Improvement Agenda 24. A member felt it would have been good to have a written update from the FBU in the report and would like to see it in future. The Deputy Chief Fire Officer has advised that he'll work with the FBU Brigade Secretary to provide a written update for the next report. FA 54, late urgent items, letter of management representation 22-23. The principal accountant advised that the letter of representation had been signed off by the Chief Finance Officer and the Chairman of the Overview and Audit Committee. Statement of accounts year ended 31st March 23. The principal accountant advised that statement of accounts had been signed off by the Chief Finance Officer and the Chairman of the Overview and Audit Committee. And that is it. Any questions on matters arising? Councillor McLean.
What your statement about this morning's event? I was delighted that we were able for Milton Keynes Council to bring along our leads for learning and development, and she's fully engaged with officers now and is going to take her team back. I learned afterwards that this council gave £165,000 to the apprenticeship levy, so it's really good to we can then get our officers. I'm thinking was probably secure some more next year.
Fantastic, thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, I'd just like to record my pleasure that we've got so many apprentices. I was an apprentice when I started out in the world in agriculture, and it does give you proper grounding in the thing you're doing, and it's very valuable knowledge. And these people are going to go on and do great things, and who knows what they'll do in 5 to 10 years' time as their careers blossoms. So we should celebrate young people's success, and it's important because they're making their roads in the world which we've created. So I think it's great, Chairman, that we've done so well. Also, that of course next year we'll win those awards, won't we? Because you know where we are, we did really well, and it was nice seeing them. And also the coffee and cakes were lively around them.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other matters arising? No, thank you. That moves on to item number 4, disclosure of interest. Before I ask members if they've any to declare, just to clarify that neither discussing or approving the scheme of allowances nor discussing or approving the preset gives rise to a disclosable pecuniary interest. Are there any interests that members wish to declare? No, thank you very much. Chairman's announcements. There are none. We had hoped to have one, but can't. We'll leave that there. But we'll do it in a different way. Item number 6, petitions. Have we had any petitions?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 7, any questions?
None, Chairman.
Okay, that brings us to recommendations from committee. So we are moving to the first item, which is the medium-term financial plan. Just to make members aware when we get to vote on the recommendations of this report, that we will sorry, firstly, that we're taking all of these items under item number 8 on block. So that is the medium-term financial plan, the prudential code, prudential indicators, a minimum revenue provision, and the members' allowances. And it will be a recorded vote, just so members are aware when we get to that. I'll hand over to Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. This is paperwork that was discussed and approved by the Executive Committee at our previous meeting for recommendation to the Fire Authority for decision. Just a couple of key points, I think, from this. Yes, we are proposing a £5 increase, but we remain one of the lowest costs per residents for the services that we provide across the country. We have a fantastic capital works plan in the diary now, in the schedule, over £11 million to be spent over the next couple of years, which is a real improvement. But of course, we continue to face financial pressures and headwinds in terms of the cost of utilities remains considerably higher than what it was before the invasion of Ukraine, the pressure on the staff wage bill and the national insurance contributions costs, which, as was outlined in the Executive Committee, is going to cost us next year over £250,000 that we had not previously budgeted for. But overall, as ever, I want to thank the officer team for delivering a strong budget proposal that will enable us to keep the residents of Buckinghamshire and the city of Milton Keynes safe whilst delivering it as one of the most cost-effective services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Handing over to Ask.
Good morning, members. In the interest of individuals that weren't present last week, I'm just going to go through some key points that I want to bring to everyone's attention. Apologies if you heard this last week as well, but it's just in the best interest of individuals that weren't present last week. So we're presenting the MTFP report and a revised Appendix A, which presents the proposed revenue and capital budget for the financial years 2025-26 going up to 2029-30. Key points I wanted to bring to your attention. The service adopted a zero-based budget process for 25-26, where we reviewed all budget lines. As per the monitoring reports, we identified underspends in 24-25, which we have incorporated into our savings as part of the budget. And something I wanted to stress was this was in the region of around 600k that we identified and incorporated within our budget. They predominantly relate to bank reductions and making sure our establishment accurately reflects the actual posts we have in place. In terms of fire services, as you'll be aware, something that Councillor Walsh alluded to, we've been given the flexibility to increase our precept by £5, and that's included within our recommendations. In terms of grants, we are no longer receiving the services grant and minimum fund guarantee grant, which equated to just under 600k, and we will also see the airwave grant reduced by circa 60k. And as Councillor Walsh alluded to again, the national insurance threshold reduced and the contribution for employer contributions increased, which had a significant impact on our budget that we had to build those costs in. In terms of capital, we have presented the 5-year plan. Key areas to note are the indicative amounts included in the budget for our training facility and an options appraisal for High Wycombe Station. In order to fund this capital programme, we have also planned to reverse our voluntary revenue provision of 3.5 million for the repayment of long-term debt in 2027-28, which you will see illustrated in the Prudential Indicators paper, which follows later in the agenda. If I could now bring your attention to the revised appendices, which you hopefully received in the last week. As we have now received the final NNDR figures submitted by Buckinghamshire Council and Milton Keynes City Council, we have used these to update our financials, which is all positive news. We have updated the funding figures following confirmation from the billing authorities, which they only confirm as at 31st of January. Additionally, we've also received confirmation of the National Insurance Grant. All these changes have now been revised in the appendices, and we've given a more accurate position of what our budget will look like for 25-26. Considering all these changes, the revenue contribution to capital budget in Appendix 1A and 1B for 2025-26 up to 2029-30 has been revised in order to balance the budget. Total usable reserves at the end of 2029-30 are now forecast to be just under 4.5 million. This is an increase of just under 700k from the previous figures we had presented. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Asif. Any questions? Yeah, Councillor.
Not a question, but can I just note that the settlement for the national insurance contributions is not yet confirmed at a Fire Authority level, and when we get that, I believe we agreed to write to our MPs and seek clarification for that. Thank you.
Asif?
Just to confirm, we have received our figures, so we are aware what the final figure will be, which is in the region of around 250k. That was agreed as part of the final settlement.
If that's confirmed, could we have more detail, please, perhaps at the next meet about how that will potentially impact on the service? But as I say, it would be good to write to our MPs and clarify that with them so that they can fight our corner, as it were, with respect to any shortfall. Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I just be clear what additional information you need other than what's in the budget pack?
Well, the information in the paper says between 250 and 350,000, so it's now clarified as circa 250,000. Okay, and we're confident that the medium-term budget is going to cope with any shortfall, I assume?
Yeah, thank you. So just in terms of the medium-term financial plan, we have factored that budget in as part of our 5-year plan. So at present, we presented a balanced budget and we're confident in terms of balancing it. However, there are other pressures that Councillor Walsh alluded to in terms of inflation and pay awards. And in an ideal world, we'd probably want the national insurance costs to be fully funded, like we've seen with the pension grants as well. So there is that shortfall where we're having to cover at least £500,000 in terms of national insurance costs. So yeah, in an ideal world, we'll probably want to lobby for that additional funding in future years to fully fund it.
Okay, so we'll still be sending that letter to our MPs. Could you possibly copy all the Fire Authority members in that? Obviously, some of us work closely with MPs, so it would be good to have visibility of that.
Yes, I think it was the executive agreed that we'd do that. We'd also cover within that did we agree in that we were also covering USAR?
Yeah,
We will definitely share the correspondence. Councillor Walsh, I think you want to come on this point as well.
Yeah, thank you. And again, just for the record, the thing with the national insurance increases, we were originally told by central government that it would be fully covered off for the public sector. So we assumed the full £500,000 cost would be covered off. We have now been told only half of that cost has been covered off. So whilst £250,000 has had to be found in the MTFP, that's £250,000 per year that could have been spent on other things, such as improving capital equipment, improving our fire station. So the government told us one thing, and they've actually delivered something else. So yes, we should definitely write to our MPs, in particular those that are part of the ruling government, to see if they can make changes going forward for the following year.
Mark, can you just remind me? I'm fairly sure that when we did the pre-consultation, I forget what they call it, the bit before they issue all of the funding and the preset, we had set out concerns around the national insurance within that, haven't we? Can you just share with members what we said and that process?
Yeah, so absolutely. At the time of the consultation on the settlement, we had the methodology for allocating the national insurance grant, but we didn't have the final figures. And that's probably why some of the confusion in the papers, when we published the papers, that was pre the final settlement. So that's why we've done the revised appendices, because the final settlement wasn't published until the 3rd of February. So we didn't know until after the paper's been published. So that's why some of the confusion around the final amount. We did set out in the consultation response, we had kind of 3 or 4 key points. Those on the executive committee last week would have seen the response. One of those points was our concerns around national insurance contributions. And that's where Councillor Bailey, we talked about the range. We did talk about the range at the time, so we didn't know the exact amount. Now we do know those exact figures. We will write to MPs. And as you said, that came up last week. I have drafted something, so I just need to run it past yourself, Chairman, to make sure you're happy with it in fairly short order to MPs and members.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchery.
Yeah, I wasn't at the executive meeting though, studied it. I think one of the things in anyone who's been around local authorities for long enough, you inherit what you inherit and you gain what you gain. I mean, the national insurance thing, I think it's quite appropriate to look at improving that situation. I think it also is appropriate to recognise why national insurance was introduced. And it was the government's decision that there was a financial issue or fiscal issue in the economy. We also have to contribute the fact that we are all part of the same society. So our national insurance that we are paying is probably going to pay for something else which will, in the society, which will make people's lives better. So we presume, and that's what it should be doing. Also, we have to recognise that the positions we're in is what we inherit from the past. And we can't help going that it was always a mistake. And I've said this before, that in 2015, we reduced the council tax in 2015 by 1%. Had we not done that in 2015, we wouldn't probably be discussing the £250,000. We'd be discussing the many hundreds of thousands of pounds, which nobody in this authority, to my knowledge, was present at that decision. But those decisions by other people previously inhibit our abilities to grow in the future. And politics is all about blame these days, and what we have to really recognise is that the authorities doing a good job for the public servants. They are working very hard for our constituents, and as was said earlier, looking at an improved position next year is totally appropriate, and I'm sure that will be difficult. But we have to recognise the background in which we inherit, in balance to the decision that we are. And £250,000 is better than no £150,000. And let's see if we can work to get it improved in the next financial year.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Just a couple of points. So I'm sure we would all love a discussion about the merits or not of the national insurance increase and threshold change. Not sure. I think it's important that we keep the discussion focused on the implications for the fire authority and how the fire authority is responding in the medium-term plan. So I don't want this to, and this is to all members, not specifically, but I don't want this to turn into a political debate about the government's decision on national insurance and whether they should have done it or not done it. It is about the implications for the budget. The second point, and I have said this before because I know it is a point that you do make whenever we come to the budget at Council Statutory, the decisions that previous authorities have taken, none of us, to my knowledge, can understand the context or the reasons why they made those decisions, and we need to stay focused on our own. And I'm not sure that some of the analysis as to what would have happened is necessarily the case. Can I just ask, because I do think we raised just on one point that Councillor Stutchbury has raised, because I think we covered this in the authority. Have we done any analysis on the impact of the threshold reduction and what that means versus the increase on our headcount?
We haven't split out the two impacts. We worked it out in totality. What we do know is that the biggest impact is around the on-call with the threshold, because most of those kind of fall in the kind of the £5,000, £10,000, £15,000 per year when you include their retainer and call outs. It does proportionally impact the on-call staff or the cost of employing on-call staff more than it does the whole time in percentage terms.
Sorry, because my memory is fading clearly. Did I ask for that analysis of the executive? If not, could we get some understanding about that and the impact on on-call for the on-call work? That would be helpful. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chairman. I support the MTFP plan as it is here, and I'm not going to rehash the whole discussions we had at the executive last week, and they're available on YouTube and podcast anyway. It is, Councillor Exxon and I were on the authority at the time there's other decisions to make. You can't change 1 second ago, let alone what happened 8 years ago. But there was a concern that I raised last week. We are a precepting authority. There are other precepting authorities like parish and town councils who are equally affected, exactly, who get no support whatsoever for national insurance. And my concern raised then and again now is repeated, I apologise, in that my concern was that small businesses may not make decisions, or they make decisions based on financial constraints of the national insurance and or other changes that are going on, which means some of those compromises might be around fire safety, which means it will affect our fire safety plan going forward. And that's a risk we need to be mindful of. It's not direct of our making, but we have to deal with the consequences. And similarly, while this isn't, it's part of where we go with it, when we do have larger scale applications, planning applications, and those decisions are made about fire safety, we have to respond to those. And therefore, some of the businesses that do come out of those areas, the new industrial estates, for example, having our voice at that planning committee stage, saying they are requirements, is really important. Amongst all of this, and referring slightly to the National Apprenticeship Week, and I was a proud member to put forward, and to be part of that apprenticeship scheme all those years ago, and where we've got to renewing our staff, that also affects national insurance contributions, but not as much as everybody thinks it does because of the grant we get from the government. And I don't want that to, the right word is contaminate the good news of the apprenticeship and our plans to continue recruiting apprentices. And that comes back to your point, Chairman, about our FTE, our full-time employee and part-time employee numbers and whether it affects their future decisions. I support the plan that we have in front of us. We are still one of the lowest precepting authorities in the country for fire, and I still see a need for years to come for us to continue to argue, as we have done for many years, for £5 for fire or more. And I'd like to add my voice to those calls in future for a proper funding settlement, not just to safeguard USAR, but for our ongoing service for all of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes, because it's really important, and we can't do it on a shoestring. This is an essential service and it costs money, and we have the right. I could do with more this year. We have the right MTFP plan in front of me, I think, and the £5 for fire kind of use of the word is absolutely right this time round, and maybe in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. You did make the point on the implications for the fire safety plan at the executive, and I think it's a point well made again, that we do absolutely need to make sure that we've reflected that in the risk plan. Any other comments on the medium term plan? Oh, sorry, Mark.
So thank you, Chairman. Just to come back on those points, yeah, it's the fire safety point. It's definitely a point worth making again. It's a very good point. Just to reassure the members that weren't at the executive committee, we have factored that in as one of the risks in our community risk management plan, kind of not just the economic pressures on people, but also on businesses, and they may take riskier decisions because they're forced to, not through choice, but through pure economics. The other part we've discussed around the national insurance pressures in terms of direct employee costs, there will also be an indirect impact on us because there's pressures on businesses. They may then pass on some of that cost to us. So that's something we're going to keep under review in terms of future inflationary pressures. But just to reassure councillors, we have worked really, really hard to get our whole-time establishment numbers up to 300. We've worked really, really hard in terms of trying to improve the on-call recruitment. We are not going to let up on that. The pressure, as Councillor Walsh says, is probably what we could have done in terms of we've got less money to invest in our capital and station improvements, stuff like that. Recruitment, whole-time staff, on-call firefighters is still very much our prime focus. And Councillor, you talked around kind of the whole MTFP and future funding. I think it's worth reiterating the point I made at the executive committee around future years. They're looking at potential review of funding formulas, potential reset of business rates baselines, both of which make me quite nervous because the methodology they're using is around deprivation and ability to raise council tax. And we've got low deprivation relative to other fire services, and our ability to raise council tax, despite having a very low precept, we have very strong council tax base. It makes me nervous that kind of money, if they do that, is going to flow kind of away from this authority to other services. It's something we will continue to lobby on and to make sure we protect our position as best we can.
Thank you. Just, Mark, while I've got you, I just also want to just draw members' attention to the important part, well, it's all important, but an important part of the paper, which is 8.1 and 8.2, which are the statements of the Chief Finance Officer. Is there anything you want to add to those, Mark?
No, I think that's fairly self-explanatory, just in terms of kind of the future sustainability. Given the nervousness around future funding, that's a large reason for kind of why we're investing in the capital programme now, is to kind of make the most of that whilst we've got those funds available. And should there be future pressures in terms of reallocation of funding in future years, it's much easier to then reallocate those monies to support the revenue budget than to invest it in revenue now. And then it's really hard to kind of unpick that in future if we have to.
Okay, I apologise to members because I misled you at the beginning. I misread my brief. So it's actually just this item that we're taking on block, as in we're taking all of the recommendations on block, and it is only this item that there will be a recorded vote. Although I am tempted to call a recorded vote on the prudential indicators because it's always an interesting one. Right, so just in terms of this paper, just read through the recommendations, and I'll call on Graham to do the recorded vote. So we're being asked to approve firstly the report and statement of the Chief Finance Officer in section 8 of Annex 8 be noted. Secondly, that a council tax precept of £84.46 for a Band E equivalent property equal to an increase of approximately 10p per week, and the revenue budget as set out in Appendix 1 be approved, and the capital programme as set out in Appendix 2 be approved. Graham. Thank you, Chairman. I'll do a roll call by surname alphabetical order. When your name is called, please can you indicate whether you vote for, against or abstain? So starting with Councillor Bagg. Thank you. Councillor Bailey. Thank you. Councillor Banks. Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Exon. Thank you. Councillor Hall. Thank you. Councillor Khan. Thank you. Councillor Lambert. Thank you. Councillor Lancaster. Thank you. Councillor McPain. Thank you. Councillor Rouse. 4. Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
4.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Very good. Very much,
Councillor
yeah.
Sullivan. Thank you. Councillor Wolf. Thank you. That's carried unanimously, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members. I think it's always a good sign when there is unanimous support across all groups on the authority. So thank you. Can I just also conclude by thanking officers for the hard work on it. You have to do a challenging job of zero-based budgeting whilst there's a lot of moving parts from different parts of the central and local government machine. And as ever, you've managed to pull off a really good budget and paper. So thank you for all the work on it. That moves us on to item number 8B, which is the Prudential Code, Prudential Indicators and Minimum Revenue Provision. I'll spare Councillor Walsh and just go straight to Marcus Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members and officers. Today I'll be presenting you with the Prudential Code, Prudential Indicators and Minimum Revenue Provision for 25-26. This is a technical paper and is presented annually to this committee to approve the recommendations. The Prudential Code was established to ensure the capital investment plans are affordable, prudent and sustainable, and the Treasury management decisions are taken in accordance with good professional practice. The prudential indicators presented here demonstrate that the current plans for capital investment meet this criteria and present an acceptable level of risk for the authority. The minimum revenue provision is a statutory charge to the general fund, which ensures the authority has sufficient cash balances to repay borrowing upon maturity, reducing the refinancing risk. For the past few years, the authorised limit for borrowing and long-term liabilities has been set 2 million above the operational boundary limit to allow for effective management of cash flow. However, this paper is recommending the authorised limit is set to 2.5 million to account for the estimated amount of the liabilities relating to leases, which have been implemented from 24-25. This paper also supports the MTFP, which is presented today, and according to the MTFP, there are no plans for additional borrowing. However, as mentioned, in 27-28, the authority is forecasting to reverse the voluntary revenue provision of 3.5 million to support the capital programme set out in the MTFP. This can be seen in section 3.2, the capital financing requirements. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Sutchbury.
Firstly, thank you so much for the work you do on this. If nothing else has taught us, uncertainty is always the future. I mean, we rode through COVID and the war in Kosovo, Ukraine. And we don't know what the future is on the price of fuel and stuff going forward. We now live in a world where uncertainty seems to be tomorrow's giving. And have we got enough capacity in the planning that we've got that we can be nimble enough to adjust to it? We have a new government in America. There's lots of decisions being taken there which we have no power over to this authority. Are we sure we're resilient enough of those decisions that we can adjust to any additional costs on interest rates, such and such? If that was the case, we have no evidence that it could be. But all these things that happen in the world, we can't escape for the fact that we're part of it. Are we in a position where if there was a sudden rise in interest rates or the price of goods go up because of trade deals being curtailed and changed, and that we're so closely intertwined with our business with the European Union, are we resilient enough to deal with that? Because we can't buck the markets, can we? And will there be any looking at that long term to see what the risks are? Which is too early to say. But nothing's told us more that those two things, none of us saw them coming, and they come out of the blue, and you dealt with them very well. So it's an important question: are we resilient to deal with those changes? Because they could come tomorrow. We have no control over it, unfortunately.
Who's taken that, Mark?
Yeah, it's a good point. The prudential indicators are all about making sure it's sustainable and affordable for the future. That's why it projects a few years ahead. We bring it annually, but it's something we keep under constant review. We work closely with specialist advisors who kind of look at the market, look at what's happening, advise us on projected path for interest rates, borrowing costs, all of those things. So although it only comes to the authority once a year, it is something we look at almost on a daily basis.
Can I take it through the chairman? If there is a substantial change in the world climate on that, it will come back to an appropriate committee.
Yeah, I assumed that you would bring that to overview and audit, wouldn't you, if there was a...
Yeah, legally, if we were going to change these limits in terms of borrowing, potential limits, etc., we would have to bring them back to the authority.
As I say, it's nothing this authority can control, but I think we need to actually be ready. Thank you.
Any other questions on the prudential indicators? Councillor Walsh.
Well, I had a few words lined up for you, so we passed it along, Chairman. But thank you for that. Again, as lead member, just to pass on my thanks to the whole team that look after this. In particular, Marcus, we don't normally have the privilege of seeing a fire authority meeting, but it is a good position to be in. Borrowing is low, cash reserves are in a strong enough place, and the money is being invested well. And I also thought it was important to highlight on the papers when you look at page 78 of your pack that we have 4 million invested in sustainable investment, which I think is an excellent way forward as well.
Okay, and I apologise for not calling. I just assumed you normally.
I very much enjoyed the treasury management strategy as part of my portfolio, Chairman.
Good. Okay, I'll ask my questions at executive, so I don't feel the need to ask any further ones. Any other points before we move on? Okay, so the recommendation is that we approve firstly the prudential indicators 25-26 and the minimum revenue provision policy statement. Are we happy to do so? Thank you very much. Move on to members' allowances, this is the recommendation from the Executive Committee, and I'll just hand straight over to Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. The authority is required to adopt a scheme of allowances in advance of the ensuing financial year. The recommendation from the Executive Committee is that the authority adopts a scheme of allowances for 25-26 based on an uplift of 4%. This is based on the indexation that has been in place since 2012, with the exception of 1 year, 21-22, and therefore aligned to the preceding year's annual pay award for employees on the NJC Grey Book terms and condition, which is the majority of the authority's employees. The authority, in adopting its annual scheme of allowance, has a wide degree of discretion and need only have regard to the recommendations of the independent remuneration panels of both Milton Keynes City Council and Buckinghamshire Council, forgive me, which continue to recommend indexation aligned to those council employees' annual pay award. So it aligns with what happens at your appointed councils. The detail is set out in the agenda pack starting at page 59, and the draft scheme is set out for illustrative purposes at page 63 in your agenda packs. Nothing further to add, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on the Councillor Stutchby?
You listen to the discussions about allowance. It'd be really useful for the record to know what it actually means per household, because the 4% in percentage of the total allowances of what paid out to the officers who do work, and then the group members who do the work in the council, which they work very hard on, and the chairman and everybody else who works very hard on, with regards to their political party. It'd be useful to know the actual percentage that makes a difference to the council tax, because people will discuss it in the broad rights and in parity to the amount of work people do. I always respect the amount of work the chair and the office and members of the council do representing their responsible positions. Where we're indifferent about the decisions, I still respect the fact that they've got a big responsibility. So it'd be useful to know what it actually means per household.
We can certainly work that out. It's going to be kind of really fractional pennies, probably, in terms of if you're looking at kind of £75,000 as a percentage of our £40-odd million budget per household. It really is going to be in the margins, but we can get that information if it would help.
No. What I was trying to help, Chairman, in showing how valuable and economical that is compared to the work that people put in, and they do put work in. Every member of this authority works hard to make sure things and scrutinise things. And I think when you say it in the way you said it, it actually gives reality to the actual question around the rise. And that's why I did it, not for any other reason. And I think if you can work it out privately, I'd love to know, but I don't think you need to do it tomorrow. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and I think I speak for all members. I'm fairly sure I speak for all members that none of us ever feel comfortable talking about allowances, and I think that's the reason that it's pegged to the grey book to take away that discretion. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. 75,000. Do you know what percentage is that in total? I know it sounds 75,000, but I just want to know geographically what percentage of that total increase?
Sorry, you mean as a percentage of the total budget? Give me a minute, I'll work it out on my calculator.
I think it's around under 1%, to be honest. It's probably under 1%.
Chairman, just very quickly, and I do not have the financial qualifications finance team over there, but 70,000 over a 40 million budget is 0.00175. You're welcome.
Okay, all right, thank you. On that basis, I'm not seeing any other hands. Can move to the recommendation that the authority be recommended to adopt the scheme for members' allowances for 25-26 as shown in draft as Appendix 1. We're happy to do so. Thank you. Number 9, Treasury Management Strategy. Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, apologies, Chairman. I love Treasury Management Strategy so much. I jumped the gun when I was extolling the great work of our team, and on that basis, I will hand straight over to Marcus to run us through the papers.
Thanks, Councillor Walsh. Today I'll be presenting you with a Treasury Management Strategy for 25-26. There's only one key change into this strategy, and that's our Treasury advisors have been brought out by another company, but the service that we receive is going to stay the same, and the contract they're going to agree to, which is fine. Apart from that, there's no significant changes compared to the current strategy, and officers will continue to invest surplus funds in short-term Treasury deals that are secure, maturing on a frequent basis, while ensuring the authority can maintain adequate liquidity and meet short-term expenditure requirements. In terms of the strategy itself, there's many sections in there. There's a Treasury Management Policy Statement, Treasury Management Strategy Statement, Annual Investment Statement, Counterparty List, Prospects for interest rates, and credit rating definitions. I'll just firstly talk about the borrowing and investment position as at December 31st, and I'll speak about the interest rates projections for 25-26. In terms of borrowing, at the start of 25-26, the overall borrowing position will be 4.55 million, with maturities between 2 and 28 years, with annual interest payable of 214k, which is reflected in the medium-term financial plan. As per the medium-term financial plan, there's no provisions for additional borrowing. In terms of interest position, so the authority, as at the 31st of December, had 25.5 million invested in short-term deposits in various banks, building societies, and money market funds. By the start of 25-26, it's estimated the portfolio be in the region of £24 million. Moving on to interest rates and future projections. During 24-25, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee has voted to reduce the interest base rate on 3 separate occasions, and it currently sits at 4.5%. The authority's Treasury advisors are projecting this to reduce to approximately 3.75% by March 2026, and this can be seen in the prospects for interest statement within the strategy. The authority has been able to benefit from the decent interest rates during 24-25 and are expecting to well overachieve the budget set for the year. However, for 25-26, the investment income budget is slightly reducing to 600,000 and to account for the reduced interest rates and anticipated capital expenditure, which will then therefore mean we've got less funds available to reinvest. During 25-26, officers will continue to monitor the Treasury management position, and this will be reported to the Overview and Audit Committee. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Just one quick question for me, and apologies if I missed this previously. So the company change that's happened, could you just give members some reassurance about the diligence we just did on that change of control?
Yeah, the company was literally bought out by another company, so the contract has novated over to that other company. It's still the same individuals involved in providing that service today, so we haven't seen any material change. It's just for members to know.
Have we done any diligence on the robustness of that organisation, its previous track record, etc.? Because I assume there was a change of control clause that allowed us to look at it.
Yeah, so we've reviewed all of that as part of our standard procurement processes. When anything like that happens, we'll always review the company that's buying it out.
Who is it now, sorry?
My notes. Mitsubishi UFG Financial Group.
It was Link previously, is that right?
Yes, Link Asset Services.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point that you've just made, for the sake of the interest of us as councillors for this committee, as well as for residents, because of the change from one company to another, can that clarification be part of this process so we're all aware, so everyone knows what is coming into it? I appreciate we have to go through the different protocols and it's the same people, so no material changes. But of course, we just want to make sure that we've still got stability, that people understand that this change is a good thing and it's only because of being bought out, for instance.
Yeah, we'll certainly clarify that. I think it's about the third change of control we've had for this company in the last 10 years. It seems to change hand a few times. And as the councillor says, that service has continued well throughout that time, but we can certainly clarify that in future.
Thank you. Any other councillor Stutchbury?
Yeah, firstly, thank you for the report. The thing that I think would be useful, and I give Matthew a chance to explain it. The thing is, if you go for 3.2, the capital financial requirements rise up to 2027, 2028, and it also states that in 4.1, other matters being the authorities' limits drop by the same period. And what we don't know, as I said earlier, with the uncertainty in the world, and in the statement, the Chairman read out that interest rates are falling, which is good. What will our reaction be to that, and in the total? And it'd be useful these figures to be explained in people talk rather than figures, because all that I note the chuckling over there. Did you see that? The figures to actually in people talk, because it all sounds granular and wonderful, but we have to explain to people what it actually means. It means we actually go out and purchase things to use in the authority. We plan for things we're going to do, and it's about the capital programme, about the resilience of the authority. It'd be useful if Matthew could be able to have some scope to actually communicate those things to the public, because it's very important they understand that our long-term planning is about the health of the authority, it's the resident services and that going forward, and it's all done through the financial planning. I hope that the seriousness of that can be understood on that table.
So Councillor Stutchbury, sorry, I think you commented somebody was chuckling. I'm not aware that anybody was chuckling during the course of your comments at all. So not entirely sure where that's come from. Just on the question, I think the broader comment you're making about the understandable nature for lay people of the papers is actually a well-made point. One thing that we've certainly done when I was on the Audit and Governance Committee of Buckinghamshire Council is a session where members are taken through what the terminology is, what the implications of it are. I think actually, Councillor Stutchbury, in some respects, your comments relate to the prudential indicator paper as well as the treasury management paper. So I think it probably would be helpful for the next fire authority year if perhaps members had done that, and then we do potentially have a think about how we put a glossary or explanatory note in place for the public. Mark.
Yeah, no, I appreciate these papers are extremely technical, so we can have a look at trying to make it more understandable for everyone that's reading them. I think we have skipped back and forwards between treasury management and prudential indicators, but they are all inextricably linked. I think you make a good wider point around how it feeds into the medium-term financial plan. What we do for the public is we do what's called a council tax leaflet. It's not actually, it used to be a leaflet, it used to go to every home, but it's on the website now, where we explain to them where we get our money from, what it's being spent on, and we try and make that as user-friendly as possible. And we do have a series of comms lined up, both internal so that our staff can understand it, and also external. So I think it's really important you make the point that the public are paying council tax. They want to understand where that's going, what it's being spent on, and what benefit it gives us. So we do make sure we communicate that out. So we'll make sure we share that with members as well, so they can appreciate the communication that wraps around all of these financial papers.
And I think just to try and sort of, assuming we approve this, which in a second, just to summarise, I think the takeout that we should have from these papers is, notwithstanding significant pressures that the authority is facing, we've got a plan that supports both the delivery of the existing headcount and services that we have, with a strong transformation component and reserve, and a capital programme to refurbish stations and other elements, and that we sit as an authority that, despite those pressures and a low ability to raise council tax, we also have one of the lowest debt positions and a strong cash position. Is that a good summary of the three papers?
I think that's an excellent summary, and you put it better than I could.
I did ask,
Sorry, Councillor Stutchbury.
I did sort of address
So
it.
Councillor Stutchbury?
I addressed it to
Councillor Stutchbury, thank you. Points first. Are there any other points on the Treasury management strategy? Is your point related to the Treasury management strategy, Councillor Stutchbury?
Yeah, I just thought it'd be useful for Matthew to emphasise what he's doing, because he's got the responsibility of this, and he's going to actually communicate this strategy out to the public, because when they see stuff, it's like I was saying, you have to understand what it's spent on. And I know Matthew for long enough, he'll be able to explain that quite well, sort of in granular terms for the meeting, what the sort of things we actually do spend the money on. And he works on it very hard. So I know that he's got the ability to be able to do it.
Would you like to respond to that, Councillor Walsh?
Well, I thank Councillor Stutchbury for his faith in me as lead member for finance, property and assets, but, you know, we cannot take too much of the credit. It is our wonderful officer team that are delivering these things, but we can definitely look at, like the chairman mentioned, improving communication for the following year.
I'm sure that Councillor Stutchbury's praise for Councillor Walsh will be on the front page of the Bucks Free Press for next week. On that note, I'm going to move us to the recommendation that the authority approve the Treasury Management Policy Statement, Treasury Management Strategy Statement, and the Annual Investment Strategy for 25-26. Are we happy to do so? Thank you. Moves us on to Pay Policy Principles and Statement. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. You have in front of you the Pay Policy Principles and Statement for 2025-26. Which you are being asked to approve for publication, and I'll ask Faye to speak to it, please.
Thank you. The pay policy is required to be updated each financial year and is presented to the Fire Authority today for approval as the 2025-26 pay policy for the authority, which will be effective from the 1st of April 2025. This pay policy is based on the current 2024-25 pay policy, with amendments made to the annually updated data. For example, the budgeted establishment in section 5, reference to pay awards in section 7. And whilst there is no update to contribution rates for the firefighters pension scheme in section 10, public consultation is currently going on to change the firefighters pension scheme member rates or bandings, which will come into effect in October 2025. And we may need to do an in-year review of the policy because of that. We have updated pay multiples in section 11, and in addition, some minor amendments have been made to the wording in section 13 on re-employment and abatement. Basically, reference has been made to the recruitment and selection procedure, which was not in the previous pay policy, and further clarification has been provided on pension abatement, confirmation of the default position of the authority to abate individuals, and due to the strict rules around abatement, the need for the individual, the importance for the individual to discuss the abatement in advance with the pension team and or pension provider. Thank you for your time.
Any questions, comments from members? Councillor Stutchbury.
I always ask this question. I presume that we've discussed this with our union. I'm sure that those negotiations would have taken place, and as the union made any comments on the proposed settlement, because obviously it's not in the report, and basically I need to understand that that's taken place. Would that be possible to do so, please?
Obviously, our discussions with the unions obviously ongoing with the actual pay policy statement. There are regular conversations. I meet regularly with the trade unions from the FBU, so those conversations are ongoing, and they're fully aware of our position on the pay policy.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Happy with the pay policy, and I think the detail might be useful to look at in another meeting around performance reviews. Some employees can see that as a bit of an adversarial process, so it'd be nice to know what that is. And also, given the good work that the authority has done in diversifying the people that we're recruiting, looking at how progression is monitored with respect to ensuring that protected characteristics are not discriminated against through that process would be useful for the future.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bailey. Good question. And just in answering Councillor Bailey's question, I was going to ask separately, but let's link the two. Can you just remind us of the timeline on the gender pay gap reporting and when that will come to us? And I'm fairly sure we've also said that we would do race and disparity reporting as well. So just the timelines on that. Thank you.
The gender and ethnicity pay gap will be coming to the Executive Committee in March.
Yeah, in terms of performance and development and non-discrimination, we are looking at our where we monitor our staff in terms of objective setting, appraisals, making sure it's fair and equitable. So that's very much part of the reward and recognition piece that we're leading on at the moment, and we'll bring that to members in June. So that's really fundamental for us to make sure it is fair and equitable and it develops our staff.
Thank you. Any other comments before? I've got one question. So it is striking on page 9 of the report, the pay multiple. The highest pay to lowest pay, and indeed the highest pay to medium pay, saw a fairly material drop year on year. It'd just be helpful to understand what we think's driven that. A good thing, but what's driven?
It's the increase of the lowest paid, and because for this year the highest paid is slightly reduced from the previous year, that's what's reducing the cost.
So that's a combination of the settlement for last year, plus I assume impact of national living wage, impact on those kind of things. Yes. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We're happy to. We're being asked to. We asked that the pay policy principles and statement as set out in Appendix 1 as the statutory pay policy statement for 25-26 is approved for publication. We're happy to do so. Thank you. Moves us on to proposals for permanent change to automatic fire alarm mobilisation procedure for non-domestic buildings. So as members will know, we approved last year a pilot. That pilot has been operational across all of the services in Thames Valley, and we've got a proposal here for it to be made permanent. I'm going to hand over to Stuart.
Thank you. On the 14th of January 2024, the Fire Authority approved the commencement of an automatic fire alarm, or AFA, mobilising policy review to include a 6-month pilot trial. On the 8th of July 2024, the AFA mobilising pilot started, where BFRS would only mobilise to AFAs in all high-risk buildings and where there is sleeping risk. BFRS will continue to respond to all reports of fire. At the December Fire Authority meeting, an extension to this pilot was approved until today, the 12th of February. During the pilot trial, BFRS has seen a 54% reduction in the number of fire appliance mobilisations to false alarms in commercial properties. That is for the last 5 months, or the first 5 months of the trial, compared to the previous 5 months prior to the trial. BFRS Protection Department has seen a 2/3 reduction in the number of unwanted fire signal paperwork that they are having to deal with. BFRS home fire safety visits are currently on target, above target. Training for whole-time crews is on target for completion. Vehicle movements due to AFAs in commercial properties has reduced, meaning a drop in road risk to the public because of our blue light response, a reduction in fuel, and a reduction in wear and tear of vehicles. Since the start of the AFA pilot trial, Berkshire and Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue Services have also gone live with their changes to AFA response. This aligns us in the Thames Valley. Now that we are aligned with our mobilising protocols and procedures, has a positive effect on Thames Valley Fire Control Service. For 6 weeks from October to December, Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service conducted a public consultation which asked if BFRS should change the way we respond to AFAs.
the headline from that consultation is almost 4 in 5, so 79% of respondents agree that based on the information relating to BFRS response to AFA activation before the pilot and the number of false alarms attended, changing the response is the right thing to do. Fire Authority members, the recommendation is 1, a permanent change to Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service mobilisation policy to automatic fire alarms activations in non-domestic buildings be approved, and 2, the procedure in relation to AFA activations in non-domestic buildings be ratified accordingly.
Thank you. Just before I open up to members, just two things that I think would be helpful context. In a second, I'm just going to ask Graham to just summarise the legal implications element, because clearly from the Fire Authority's perspective, we need to understand the legal implications of what we're doing. The second point, Stuart, unless I'm mistaken, we started the pilot early, and I think it was certainly Royal Berkshire came to it later than us, but I read in the report they've made it permanent already. So have we run the pilot for longer than Berkshire and Oxfordshire have done, and they've therefore moved permanent before?
So they haven't run a pilot. They have consulted and gone live straight away, whereas we run a pilot to see what our results would be, consultation, and then the proposal is to go live as business as usual.
I think that's important context, that we've run effectively a 1-year pilot of this before coming to the permanent decision. I think that is important context for members. Thank you. And Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Members, happy to give some context to the legal implications as set out on page 116 of your report. If an automatic fire alarm were to be derived from an actual fire, obviously we would mobilise, but there was some concern. There has been some concern about what would the liability be if we failed to attend, and the legal implications just set out the background there. The common law, the Court of Appeal, has determined that there is no liability in terms of negligence for failure to attend a fire if that were to ensue. That doesn't negate from the other sort of reputational damage and what have you, but there's no legal liability for failure to attend an incident, contrasting with the situation of the ambulance service, for example, because they're deemed to be a branch of the health service. So there's no legal liability in that respect. And the other legal implication is this has been subject to a period of consultation running alongside the pilot. So it's very important that members have a look at the synopsis of the consultation results and take those into account before you make a decision to permanently change the policy.
Thank you. Questions, comments from members? Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is something we've looked at a number of times over the 12 years I've served on the authority, and as my last my last full Fire Authority meeting before I retire, as an elected member for the authorities, I'm glad to see this here. It makes sense to do this, and in terms of, if you look at what we've been discussing earlier on in terms of our medium-term financial plan, our operational effectiveness, and the way that we consult. I mean, there was reference to Mr. Britton's report about the gunning principles, about doing this and it being meaningful consultation. We did that. We took our time to make a decision. I think that's the right thing for us in terms of our risk profile and where we serve. And so looking at the cost to run a full mobilisation to a false call means we're also putting genuine calls at risk also because of how we stretch our services. So for me, this was almost a no-brainer to do, but it took us quite a while over the years to get to the position that we made last January. And I know it's not probably a universal liked proposal, but it's the most sensible proposal. And I was surprised, Mr. Gross, to hear that the other two authorities in Thames Valley just went ahead and did it. I'm glad that we took time to consider the evidence. And that's a mark of this authority, and I'm very proud of that. We consider the evidence, and our risk plan matches that evidence. So I support what we have in front of us, and I think the quicker businesses realise they need to check their fire safety systems, the better. As a point of note, in the report where we do go through, maybe it's not in the report, it's in the actual paper, where we have the different risk categories, the red, amber, green. I think they're appropriate. I do think we should review them regularly, but I know that we do, but if I don't say it, I'll kick myself when I see it being a webcast later on in my life. that we're reviewing it again. But thank you very much for that, and I support it. Thank you.
Is there any points that you want to pick up? Or no, it's fine. It was a supporting statement. So I've got Councillor Walsh first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just one very small question, and I think it is outlined in the paper, but just to be 100% certain, because the definition of non-domestic is always a little bit vague, but we will continue to attend any automatic fire alarms for any sheltered housing properties and stuff, won't we? Yeah, okay.
The definition's overnight, but you just should.
Yes, domestic. So the definitions are in there. So where there is a sleeping risk, being sheltered housing, care homes, yeah, we have defined that. And we have been challenged by some organisations. We had a challenge from Milton Keynes Police Station last week, but there needs to be a conversation between them and their alarm receiving centres to make sure they understand the risk before they send that 999 call to Thames Valley Fire Control. But we have a process now to work through for those organisations to make sure their response is right.
That's very reassuring to hear, because Councillor Hall and I met with 100 residents in sheltered housing in Princess Risborough that are very grateful that when the alarm goes off, they don't have to wait 3 hours for the contractor, and our wonderful local fire service comes and turns it off for them. So on their behalf, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, Chair, correct me if this should have been included or not included. Where you've got all the risks in Appendix 5, and it's got it down there. Been a resident in Buckingham in the past 3-4 years. I think the risk of flooding is high. In fact, it's far than high. The climate's changed. We did work in previous years to get it into the corporate risk register, the climate change into corporate risk register, when Emily Darlington was on the fire authority. So should it be included or shouldn't it be included? Because not only Buckingham suffers from flooding, I know that there's been trouble in Marlow. I know there's been trouble in other parts of Buckinghamshire. I also know there's pressures in Milton Keynes and Stony Stratford. So I'm surprised it isn't highlighted, because our teams of firefighters have been very good at supporting people in the communities in what they do. They've come out and they help organise and assist residents when they're at their most affected. So I'm surprised it's not in there. Maybe it's because we live in a river town. I see it like that, and maybe it's because my situation in Buckingham has been quite horrendous in the past 12 to 18 months with flooding. So should it be in there, Chair, or is it in there in a sense, but it's under something else, but it isn't actually worded? I just like the words actually included in it, because that shows sincere understanding of the risk. I absolutely have no doubt, through personal experience, when the fire authority reacts really quickly, positively, and helps people, but it's not in there. It looks like we aren't mentioning it and we don't actually do it. So I think it needs to be included. I don't think it's a big thing, just putting those words in. Gary's nodding his head at me, which probably means he agrees with me. I think that might be what it means. So I would like to ask that it's included, please.
Thank you. Our Assistant Chief Officer Doug is volunteered to take that.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. So if there's a point of clarity that you want in the paper, absolutely, we can look at it. But just so that members are really clear, this one's specifically about our response to automatic fire alarms. And ultimately, if members agree the new position, what that will do is clearly free up resources to attend all the other emergency types that we seek to attend. Just for further assurance, if councillors aren't aware, that climate risk is one of our corporate risks now on the corporate risk register. Obviously, it features quite heavily in the CRMP, and certainly planning for sort of years 1 to 5, the new CRMP is going to be really heavily focused around those types of incidents, because we know, whilst they're low frequency, they are high impact both to the communities and us.
Thank you. Councillor Lancaster.
And they're not low frequency anymore.
Sorry, Councillor Stutchbury, what was that?
I'm just saying that I've been around long enough that they're not low frequency anymore. They are frequent events now. They are steadily more frequent events.
So sorry, Councillor, I think I'm disagreeing with that. I think we're just describing, this paper's on the automatic fire alarm. I think the Assistant Chief Officer was describing the climate risk is where that element that you're picking up is being addressed. And certainly, I think it was the last Fire Authority meeting, we noted the response of the service to the flooding in Buckingham. And you're quite right to point out that flooding is happening in other parts of Buckinghamshire. Sorry, I've got Councillor McLean next.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Stuart, for bringing the paper. We've watched this with interest over the past few months, and the crystal ball now comes in. With AI, will AFAs become more clever and be able to give better information so that we can actually temper the response in time? The analogy I would use is 20 years ago, CCTV on something like a school, you didn't need to have a balaclava on to know that you wouldn't be seen. Now we've got evidential quality CCTV, schools, pubs, etc. So do you see a progression in the power of AFAs?
Almost certainly, and even now, it depends on the commercial property owner, responsible person, to what level of automatic fire alarm detection they have within their building, whether it's zonal, whether it picks up detect heads, whether it's a large scale building, and how they decide to have or what level of cover they decide to have. That's almost certainly going to increase. The responsibility is very much on the commercial owner, property owner, responsible person to decide what level of cover they want. The greater the money they're prepared to invest in it, the greater protection they will have, but the greater knowledge they will have as well of their system.
So is that part of the education that we're going back with this policy, which I'm sure will be approved, that this is what you've got now? If you want to sort of go up a notch or two, if you can enhance your AFA system, perhaps link it to a CCTV, that will give you a bit more assurance that there's if there is a fire, that it will be reported and then will turn out.
One of the things that have come out of this proposal is that our business engagement officers in the protection team are more engaged with commercial risk, especially the lower commercial risk. The higher risk we will still go to, but the lower commercial risk, to make sure they understand their responsibilities and understand the information that they have access to from within our service and elsewhere, and also the information they need to pass on to their alarm receiving centres to pass on to us. So our engagement teams are getting into more and more commercial properties to make sure that they understand their responsibilities and what they have to offer.
Thank you, that's reassuring.
Thank you. Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you. Keith has taken quite a bit of what I want to say, but also I just wanted to put on record to say thank you in regards to doing this. It's something that, whilst we've got AI developing on a daily basis now, it's great to see that we can actually put these automatic systems in place to make that difference. But I also want to thank the Chief Firing Officer as well for her press release on making sure that we promote manual fire alarms and making sure that we're checking them on a regular basis. So I just think it's really assuring that we're trying to also adapt to new times, but also making sure that those who've got manual are checking them on a regular basis. So I thank yourself and also all of us to keep promoting that as much as possible.
Thank you. Just any final comments? So just before we move to that, can I just, so I too welcome this, and I do think that both officers should be commended for the rigour with which we've gone through the pilot to get to this stage, and the consultation is rigorous alongside it. And I hope that our communities in Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes will draw an enormous amount of comfort from the way that we've gone through this process. So it was a really good paper and really helpful. And I'm sure when you were preparing for the questions today, you weren't expecting AI to appear on the list. So that was an impressively agile answer. So we're being asked to approve a permanent change to Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service mobilisation policy to automatic fire alarm activations in non-domestic buildings. And we're also being asked to approve that the procedure in relation to automatic fire alarm activations in non-domestic buildings be ratified. Are we happy to do so? Thank you very much. That moves us on to the 2025-26 annual delivery plan, and I will just hand straight over to Anne-Marie Carter.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. This paper seeks to gain approval of our 2025-26 annual delivery plan. We've taken a slightly different approach this year, following feedback and a review of best practice. And this plan is for 1 year, with the actions being more specific to ensure they are measurable and achievable, but also understandable by staff and the public. Following approval of the CRP in December 2024, the team have been working to identify the key priorities for this year across our objectives and enablers. We reviewed a number of items to build the plan, including the CRMP risk and actions, HMIC FRS reports, both ours and others, staff feedback, the FBU improvement agenda for 2025, corporate risks, and the fire standards. On page 177, you will see the prioritised actions by objective and enabler in a clear plan on a page format. Some key areas to highlight on the plan include the on-call improvement plan, year 1, building our partnership with the Safety Centre, scoping options for High Wycombe, and reviewing our health and wellbeing proposition. For each of these actions, they will be broken down by quarter with clear measures of success and related KPIs for them. The plan will be monitored and scrutinised monthly via our new internal governance processes with further updates to members. Thank you for your time and happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchfield.
It's another thing. I expect the answer will be yes, it's in there, but and maybe it's my dyslexia. I can't see it. The FBU manifesto as a priority and delivery plan. Where is it mentioned, and at what point is it? Because we were fortunate enough to have them explain it to us. All the things in it are so very reasonable that you would suspect that you'd want to agree that they're all about health and well-being of our staff. Which line does that come under, and where would it be in there? Because it's important the words were used, yeah, that the union were involved in it. So just can't see it in a column anywhere here, unless it's in a sub-column, which I'm under something else, which I'm trying to seek an explanation, because that's a big part of what we need to get on with for the well-being of our workforce.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. It doesn't say anywhere on the plan we will deliver the FBU improvement agenda, but there are a number of items that relate to it. In terms of the Westcott, that delivers the improvement agenda item number 2, which is around training. The item review our health and wellbeing proposition will support the item number 3 on the improvement plan for health and research. Fight for 52. Just scrolling through the document. Bear with me. And employee and benefits package, and there is also an item about High Wycombe. In the background, we do have a more detailed document that links these to the FBU improvement agenda alongside our HMIC AFIs.
Thank you. Any other comments? So just a couple of. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bailey.
I thought at a higher level this was a very nice report for the public to take a look at and see what the Fire Authority was doing. I just wanted to thank you all actually for giving it to us in a relatively plain format, because the authority's branding is very heavy on ink, and now I am responsible for purchasing toner cartridges where I work. It makes me shudder every time I see the authority branding. So I would encourage that that the authority receive papers in a relatively plain format, so it is saving a little bit of money on the toner.
Thank you. I was going to make a similar, not necessarily a specific observation on the branding, although I think that's the point I made. I have to say, and I've recorded a number of conversations over the last 3 years that I've been involved around the plan and making it clear and structured. It is a really well-written strategic delivery plan, and really easy to understand and well structured in the way that it's been put through. So the journey that you've been on as a team and building this. And building the narrative of what you're doing, I think I just wanted to commend. I think the key question always with this is just for clarity for members and for the public, the mechanisms by which we will track the delivery against this plan and hold ourselves to account, so that it's not just something we sign off and forget about, but we're constantly tracking ourselves against it.
Yes, so we have introduced a new governance structure at the start of December, and that starts at the bottom with some delivery groups going up to a programme board and a performance board. We go through every single item on our current plan on a page, line by line at each of those delivery groups on a monthly basis to review those, and then they are presented up to the Performance Board, which is chaired by the Chief Fire Officer, to scrutinise that, and we'll continue to follow that process.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're being asked. Oh, sorry, Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Is this possible to add FP delivery plans on the management of on the same role? Is it possible to add it onto the FP management plan?
Oh, sorry, are you asking to add the FBU improvement
Yes, please.
plan?
Yes.
So just can I share a personal view before I ask officers? I think it's important that we have a separation of the officers and fire services delivery plan and the FBU's improvement plan, because we aren't a vehicle for just delivering the FBU's improvement plan, and there are things that sit over and above the FBU improvement plan that sit within it. I think I think all of us have talked about the need to make sure that the FBU are having regular dialogue and inputting, and we can show them that we are responding to each and every one of the points. But I think it's really important we have that distinction between the two. So personally, I wouldn't be supportive of a specific reference to delivering it, because there are things that may evolve in that improvement plan over the period that we may not, as an authority or as or officers in the service, agree with. We've got different mechanisms for making sure we respond to that. That's just my personal view. We've done a lot in the last, particularly in the last 12 to 18 months, to really work closely with the FBU on delivery of that plan. I'm just not sure this is the appropriate mechanism. I don't know, Louise, whether you want to respond on that.
Thank you. Just for reassurance, because we have managed to get this plan done in such a timely way, what we were able to do is sit down with the FBU reps and go through any actions from their previous improvement agenda from last year, and also look at their 25-26 one. So as Anne-Marie's just said, actually a lot of what they've asked for to be considered is woven into this. It's just not explicit for the reasons the chairman's outlined, but they've seen this plan and they are, I think it's fair to say, Anne-Marie, they're really comfortable with it in terms of our direction of travel. So we have very much built in their considerations into this.
I wonder, just reflecting on that answer and the comments from Councillor Khan, I wonder whether one thing that might be worth us reflecting on in the papers, when we are producing a paper which has relevance to either the FBU and its role as one of, it's not the only union obviously, but one of the unions, or indeed where it's specifically relevant to the FBU improvement plan, whether we have a section that talks about engagement with key unions and stakeholders, so that members can get comfort that that engagement has happened.
Clarified, Chair. That's understandable. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, happy to. Michael. So we're being asked that the 2025-26 annual delivery plan be approved by the authority, and that approval of the reformatting of the document in line with corporate branding before publication is delegated to Chief Fire Officer, Chief Executive. We have to do so. Thank you very much. That moves us to late urgent items. The following reports are required to be considered by the Fire Authority to meet the statutory backstop date of the 12th of February 2025 for the publication for audited accounts for the 23-24 financial year. We are certainly cutting that one fine. We move first to late urgent item 1, the auditor's annual report. I'm going to hand over firstly to Councillor Walsh, and then we have Katie Henry from KPMG who's joining us remotely.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. Yes, again, I won't jump the gun on this one. I'm claiming to be an expert when it comes to the auditing part, but as ever, I'd like to thank all of the team that oversaw this work and hand directly over to our officer team at KPMG. Thank you.
Casey, over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'll cover the overall picture of the two documents that we've got here. So the first one is our annual auditor's report, which is the public document that will be published alongside your accounts. But the main one I want to focus on is our sort of overall report in terms of the audit for this year. So on page, I should have, sorry, I've just flicked onwards. So it's page 217 of the pack, so page 6 of our report, which shows our overall audit findings. So the audit is very much substantially complete at the minute, and I'll hand over to Philip in the room shortly, who'll go through some of the detail of the external audit. In terms of the work that's still ongoing, as it were, the valuations of the pensions. So the work is very much complete. There's one item that we're still working through on our side. They've identified a couple of immaterial adjustments that aren't included within our document here. But again, there's no major work outstanding per se on that. I have noticed a typo on a similar page, on the same page around the control deficiencies. We only had one around the review of the bank reconciliation that we've discussed with the team. We removed the revenue from the contract one, so that'll come out of our final report. Our audit opinion will be disclaimed for this year end, which is very much driven by issues sort of with predecessor auditors, etc., and prior year audits. It is worth saying though, and a huge thanks to the finance team, it's almost as cleaner as disclaimer as we could have gotten. We had various different sort of options in terms of our disclaimers that we could issue here at KPMG, and this was the best one to say we're kind of 95% there, but unfortunately haven't got all the way for various reasons as documented within our report. Sorry, relating to the backstop. The one, again, similar to that, is the pension fund statement. So that's not the pension fund that sits on your balance sheet. It's the statement at the back. And we're still working through with actuaries on that for the March 25 year end, but we've called it for March 24 in terms of there won't be any work performed on that. But overall, I want to sort of say huge thanks to the finance team. It's been a slog, I think, for them to get there. And I'm glad that we are there and we're looking into March 25 year end. Shortly. The other thing before I hand over to Philip, I just want to pull out is on page 24 of the pack, just on our audit fees. So there are fees in there that we haven't yet disclosed. So again, we'll come when we issue our final report, that will be updated to include those fees. But all of our fees are subject to ratification from the PSAA. I've communicated those to Mark and the team already, but it just needs to go through the PSAA for approval. And of course, that'll be circulated to yourselves prior to sign off. But I'll hand over to Philip to go through the bulk of that detail. But again, thank you very much to the finance team for getting us to where we are now.
Thank you very much. For the benefit of those members who aren't part of Overview and Audit Committee, I'll speak in a little bit more detail about the audit risks in our report and why they've been identified, as well as our findings. We have identified two significant audit risks. This does not mean there is an operational risk for the authority, but these are the areas as part of our work where we've identified there is the greatest potential for there to be an error or adjustment required to the accounts. There are two areas that we've identified. So the first one relates to management override of controls. This is a risk on every single audit across the globe, from the largest multinationals through to the smallest owner-managed business. And this reflects that those who prepare the accounts have the ability to make adjustments to the way they are presented and prepared, which may manipulate the position to present a picture which is different to what it should be. That's not to say that we've have any concerns with the finance team here at the authority, but it is something which is just an inherent risk to every set of financial statements. We're pleased to say we have not identified any matters to report. We have not identified any instances of any manipulation to the accounts. We also have identified a significant risk relating to the valuation of pension liabilities, and this reflects that estimating the liability that you hold in relation to your defined benefit schemes is complicated and requires judgmental assumptions. The effect of making very small changes to those can have an outsized impact to the value of the liability. As Katie mentioned, our work in this area is on the verge of completion. There's still a little bit more to do, but in terms of the assumptions, which is the key area which drives that risk, we are confident overall that the assumptions are balanced. You will see in our report there are some which we think may be a little cautious, some that we think may be a little optimistic, but when you consider them in the round and the overall impact it has on the valuation, we are satisfied that they are balanced. Whilst it wasn't identified as a significant risk, we do also perform procedures in relation to the valuation of your land and buildings. You're required by the CIPFA code to hold those land and buildings at their fair value each year, which again requires you to use chartered surveyors, who then apply judgment in determining the value of those buildings, such as the fire stations. And again, we are satisfied that the value of those stations and offices is fair and balanced. As well as our work on the financial statements, we also perform a review on the authority's arrangements to secure value for money. So our responsibilities are not to assess whether the authority has or has not achieved value for money, but to assess whether the authority has proper arrangements in place. We are pleased to report that we have not identified any indication that the authority does not have proper arrangements. We haven't identified any what are called significant weaknesses in relation to value for money. You may be aware, in our audit plan, we identified a significant risk relating to value for money in respect to the findings raised by HM Inspectorate. This reflected the fact the Inspectorate raised a variety of important actions for the authority to implement, which may indicate that services are not performing at in the position that they should be. Our work was to assess whether the authority had taken appropriate actions to respond to that inspection report. And our view is that the authority has. We are satisfied that there was a good action plan, that progress is being monitored, and the plan that put in place should allow the authority to track its improvement and ensure any further interventions are required, that they could be done on a timely basis. And therefore, in our opinion, we will have a clean view in respect of value for money. And the last point I wanted to touch on was how the authority will get to a clean external audit opinion in the future. There is on page 22 of our report, I think it's 233 of the pack, a timeline setting out the approach that all auditors at authorities where there are disclaimed opinions will be reaching a position of unmodified opinions in the future. It's expected that this will take a number of years to do. One of the factors driving the disclaimers this year is, whilst we have done a lot of work over the transactions that were recorded in the year, and we're not in a position of having identified any material misstatements in those, there are balances brought forward from the previous disclaimed period which have a knock-on impact on this year. And it will take time to do the necessary work to be satisfied that there are no brought forward potential material errors. For some of those brought forward balances, the impact of those will fall away in future years. For instance, what the authority expected to receive in terms of unpaid invoices will at some point be collected, and therefore that matter resolves itself. On the flip side, there will be things like brought forward balances for equipment where the authority will have purchased assets in the past, and they will at some point need some form of inspection to ensure that what forms the opening balance for equipment is correct. Where we see the authority getting to, subject to the satisfactory completion of our work for 24-25, but we expect that we may be able to remove the disclaimer for the 24-25 year and be in a position of issuing a qualified opinion, because we will have done work on some, but not all of the brought forward opening balances, which will allow us to limit the area where we are unable to gain the fullest amount of assurance to quite a small number of areas. Although I should stress, I don't want to preempt the work that we'll do for that year, and something else may come up which affects that view. The view in terms of when you would reach an unmodified opinion, we are very much guided by the advice and guidance put out by the FRC and the National Audit Office. And that guidance, which can be made available to members if you are interested, anticipates that most authorities will reach an unmodified opinion for the 26-27 year, because it will allow time for that work to be done over a period of time. So getting accounts out will be done in a more quick fashion and also in a manner which is most economical to the taxpayer. We will, of course, keep the authority informed on how exactly progress against that target will progress as the years go on. And with that, Katie and I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? No? No? Okay, well, thank you both for that. Is there anything that the finance team want to add?
Yeah, just to kind of give reassurances in terms of some of the stuff that Philip mentioned, just to also say KPMG is the first year they're auditing us, so it does take a bit of time to kind of build that relationship. But some of the stuff around management override of controls, we do have segregation of duties in place to ensure those controls are in place. We don't just get audited by external audit KPMG, we also get audited internally as well. So we are heavily audited throughout the year to ensure there are sufficient controls in place. And the other two bits around pensions valuations, we have professional actuaries that we refer to and get advice from, and based on their advice we then report upon that on our statement of accounts. And finally, the valuations that Philip alluded to, again, we have professionals that come and value all our properties and we utilise their services. And in terms of the statement of accounts, again, just to give reassurance, prior to 22-23 our accounts were unqualified since I've joined the authority, so we've had a clean set of accounts. It's just that this backlog has caused a delay. So the hopeful expectation is hopefully by 26, 27 onwards, we'll go back to unqualified. But just bear with us while we get through this journey. But hopefully KPMG have given you assurances that even though they are disclaimed, there are a good set of accounts that we have produced in a timely manner.
Good. Thank you very much. Okay, we are being asked to note. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. We're being asked to note this report. We're happy to do so. Great. Thank you for the work. Moves us on to late urgent item number 2, the letter of management representation. Councillor Walsh, do you want to say anything, or should I just go straight to Marcus? Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members and officers. The letter of management representation is a legislative requirement and is a self-explanatory paper. Information contained within this letter contribute to auditors being able to form their opinion as to whether the financial statement give a true and fair view of the authority's position as at the 31st of March 2024. This letter is to be signed by Director of Finance and Assets, Mark Hemming, and also the Chair of the Overview and Audit Committee, Councillor Carroll, following today's meeting. I thank you and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Stutchery.
I suppose it'll be a job for Mr. Carroll to sign it following this meeting, as he's not here. So I presume that's he'll follow it following the meeting when he is here. Is that correct? Because he can't sign it following the meeting because I thought he's not present. I'm sure if he was present, he would sign it.
Yes, that's correct.
Any other questions? No, in which case we're being asked to approve that the letter of management representation 2324 be approved for signature by the Chief Finance Officer and the Chairman of Overview and Audit. We're happy to do so. Thank you. This is on to late urgent item 3, statement of accounts year ended 31st of March 24. Councillor Walsh, you want to say anything before I hand over to Marcus? No, Marcus.
Thank you. So in front of you is the set of statement of accounts for year ending 31st of March 2024. The accounts outline the financial activities of Buckinghamshire Milton Keynes Fire and Rescue Service for the year ending 31st of March 24. It shows the financial detail of the services the authority have provided, together with explanatory notes, the resources consumed, and the financial position as at the year end compared to the previous year. When pulling together these accounts, the authority has followed the CIPFA Code of Practice on local authority accounting in the UK 2324 based on the IFRS, which is the code. The accounts are drawn up in accordance with the accounting policies, which are set out in detail in the Statement of Accounting Policies section. The responsibility of the proper administration, excuse me, of the financial affairs of the authority is vested with the Director of Finance and Assets, who is required by law to confirm the authority's system of internal controls can be relied upon to produce an accurate set of statement of accounts. The accounts contain 4 main statements. Each of the 4 main statements are supported by disclosure notes, providing additional detail to the figures presented. The 4 main statements include the movement in reserve statement, the comprehensive income and expenditure statement, the balance sheet, and cash flow statement. The accounts also contain information regarding the firefighters' pension fund account, along with a narrative statement providing information about the authority, including key facts about the authority, the financial performance during 23-24, and corporate risk. As Katie and Philip has presented the detailed auditor's opinion, the overall audit opinion itself is contained within the accounts and will be signed following this meeting. The statement of accounts themselves will be signed by the Director of Finance and Asset, Mark Hemming, and also the Chair of the overall Audit Committee, Councillor Carroll, following today's meeting. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you much. Any questions? No, in which case, being asked to agree that the statement of accounts year ended 31st of March 2024 be approved for signature by the Chief Finance Officer and the Chairman of Overview and Audit Committee, we're happy to do so. Thank you. I assume the finance team now takes 6 months annual leave before starting next year's activities. But no, genuinely, that's been a mammoth amount of papers from the finance team in particular today. So thank you for all the work, and thank you to our auditors for the work that you've done as well. Thank you very much. Okay, before we move to item number 13, I am conscious, and Councillor Lambert referred to this, that the next meeting of the Fire Authority will be the annual meeting, which will be held on Wednesday, the 11th of June at 11 AM at the Blue Light Hub in West Ashland. And I'm conscious that there are members, Councillor Lambert has referred to himself, but there are also some others who will be retiring. And so this will be their last meeting. And of course, for some of us in Buckinghamshire, the electorate may be retiring us, not necessarily of our own volition. But I just wanted to lucky you with Milton Keynes until next year. I just wanted to put on record my thanks to all members that have served not only over the course of the last 12 months, but over the last 3 years that I've been Chairman of the Authority. It is I think all of us that serve on it would say it's one of the best things we do as councillors, and it's been a pleasure to serve with all of you. And I wish everybody well who is retiring, and wish everybody that's standing for election in May well as well. That moves us to item number 13, which is exclusion of the press and public. To consider excluding the public and press representatives from the meeting by virtue of paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the reports and minutes contain information relating to any individual. Paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the reports and minutes contain information relating to the financial or business affairs of a person, including the authority. And on these grounds, it's considered the need to keep information exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Are we happy to do so? Thank you very much.